And we are back after last night's mental breakdown. I'm very sorry about that. I was very tired, hungry, and yeah. But anyway, I'm feeling fresh as a daisy now. The footage was quite funny to look back on because this is what you saw, you know, it looks pretty good. And this is what angle the camera was actually at while filming. So as you can see, I was getting quite careless with what I was doing, so it was time to stop by this point. But I was still having fun, just not paying as much attention as I should have. So anyway, what we're going to do now is work out the thingy that holds the toilet roll. So I stole this one from home. There is a small issue with it, but it's more to do with the dimensions as opposed to the overall design. So I will explain that to you now. Okay, so to put this dowel in here, what you could do is just drill a hole all the way through going into this side, and then you just slide it through with the toilet roll in there. And it goes in like that. But then, you know, over time it could get loose and that could keep falling out over time. So that's not going to be great. Similarly, you can't just glue the dowel in place because as soon as it comes to replacing the toilet roll, you can't do it. So we need a system in here that you slide it in and it locks itself in place. So the idea that I had was using some sort of keyhole lock so that we can slide this in and then it slides down and locks itself into place. So if I was to draw that, the hole on the outside is going to look like this on the top. Well, it's going to be round. And then we'll have a smaller hole on the bottom here and join them up like that sort of thing. And what we would need to do on the dowel, if we're looking at it from a side view, is it would be its normal size like this. And then we would cut a little notch out of it like that. And that notch there is exactly the same width as this component here. So let me just rip this out and then I can kind of demo it, I suppose. So the dowel would be that shape. You can slide it in, and then if that was to reach all the way to the other end sort of thing, you could then slide it down and it would lock on this area here. And because it's got the two shoulders on there, it's going to prevent it from moving side to side. The only issue being that I haven't left enough room in here to allow that mechanism to work properly without interfering with the dovetails and leaving some sort of short grain here. Also, I don't have a lathe to produce a perfectly cylindrical thingy in there, so I'm going to have to cut some sort of notch in there. I'll work it out later. But for this to work, you need to measure the size of the toilet roll along this dimension, which is 40 mil, but then with a little bit of compression, we could make it 35. So let's go for 35. So that is the highest point that this dowel can go before hitting that shelf. So if I put 35 on the ruler, measuring down from the bottom of the shelf, it is there. So that is where this dowel is going to have to come in. Now, by the time I slide it down and it locks itself into place, it's going to start hitting the dovetails here, which is what I said, it's going to interfere with them. Obviously, by this point, this project is becoming a little bit of a prototype, should we say? Yeah, prototype. Because then if I make it out of nicer timber in the future, it's going to be pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this mechanism. I will be drilling into the dovetails, but when you look at the drawings in the description to download, they will be fixed and you should be able to fit a standard toilet roll in there. And it's worth saying, if you have already looked at my website and you're wondering why the plans cost 1p, I have no idea. If you try and sell something for free on the website creator, you basically have to put in a request for me to send it to you. You can't just download it. So unfortunately, I have to charge you 1p for it, which is taking the mick a little bit, but there we go. So I think the fact that I'm going to be drilling into these dovetails, I should probably glue this section first, which is quite annoying. I could have done that last night in my KFC craving state. I didn't even get that KFC in the end. I'm chatting rubbish. So we're going to glue this together. But before we do so, we're going to sand all of these inside faces because they're going to be a little bit difficult to get to later on, and deburr all the edges of these dowels as well because they're looking a little bit manky around those holes. So I'm going to start with a nice coarse 120 grit, and we're going to be careful not to hit these pins because that's going to affect the joint later on. Right, so I'm probably not going to bother gluing the dowels because that's just another thing to clean squeeze out of later on. So we're just going to pop those in dry, and those will all be captive in there anyway. Doesn't matter too much. So a little bit on the back to the tails and the sides as well. Right, let's just check that these are still all aligned. Yeah, so I'm probably just going to keep those in there just to make sure that it is possible to get them in afterwards. Right, so we'll leave that to dry and we'll start working on the dowel on the other component. Right, so like I say, the dowel needs to go in 35 millimeters from the bottom of here. Well, the top of the dowel needs to start from 35 millimeters down. So we are going to do a little mark down at 35 from there. And then I know the dowel is 25 millimeters, so that means I need to add half of that on in order to get that center point on there. So there's 10, 1, 2, 2, 12. And I'm also going to offset this towards the front of the component as well, because it doesn't quite give enough room behind it where the wall's going to be if I centralize it on there. So I think if I do it in about, I don't know, well, probably another 35 mil actually. Okay, and then because I don't want to drill from the inside and risk breaking out the outside of it, I'm going to drill it from the outside first. So I just need to transfer this measurement to the opposite side. So I'm going to do that with a marking gauge, get that set up against the little crosshair that I've done on there, transfer it along here, and then work in from the front, get it set up on there, and from the same edge on the crosshairs there. So I know that is the point where I need to be drilling. So 25 mil force bit, I'm going to put this above the split top on my Rubo, and we're just going to do this by eye. Obviously, if you have a drill press, use that, but I don't. In fact, let's not be silly here. I've got a split top, I could just cramp this down and then it's not going to break out. So yeah, 20 mil is going to be enough of a keyhole sort of size, so let's do that. Scratch this down so I've still got that center line on there. And we're going to get it so that the 20 mil hole literally scrapes the side of that 25, so I can get it as high as possible while still having that keyhole sort of shape. Cool, and then we'll just chisel those little points out to be exactly the same width as this smaller hole. Lovely, nice little keyhole shape. And now the issue is trying to get two straight parallel flat spots on the edge of this, because it's going to be very difficult to reference off that and make sure they are polar opposites of one another. So I've still got a marking gauge line left over from where I drew those original crosshairs on. So I reckon if I lock my marking gauge to that, I know that that is hitting the outermost peaks of that hole. So then if I jam this into there like that and put a little mark here where both of them line up on those crosshairs, that should mean that I've got those completely opposite one another. And then I can put a little mark here where the 20 mil spot starts and a mark here where it starts. And then if I take that out and rotate it around 180 degrees, jam it back in there, and make these dots line up with the midpoint again, that means that the two that I traced on here are on the opposite side, and I can mark them on here. So then I know that I've got two 20 mil distances on both sides of this dowel, and it's lined up on that center point when I flipped it 180 degrees. So now in theory, if I join those two outer points up with a saw cut all the way along and do that on both sides, the resulting thickness between should be 20 millimeters, hopefully. So I've got this little bit here that's sort of beyond those 2 points. So that's going to kind of protrude out the side of the shelves, and I can round that off or something, make it quite decorative anyway. I need to leave it on there because that's what locks it in place. So I'm going to set up a marking gauge from the end grain to make it nice and uniform width all the way around. And that's going to be one of the first walls in there. So keeping it nice and pressed in. Okay, then I need to get the thickness of the side beyond that little line that I've just scratched on, so let's pop it on there. Doesn't have to be a stupidly tight fit, but we'll make it pretty good. I've done a little knife mark on the other side, and we'll realign the marking gauge with that knife mark. Lovely, so now I'm just going to square these lines across, and then I can see where I need to create that flat spot. Okay, so we've got 3 lines here. That was the center point that we used to align these two, so it's just these outside ones that we need to scratch. So we'll get a square in from the end grain and square that between the lines, meaning that this area here is wastage, and we'll do the other side as well. And that side there is wastage. So let's cut those out and see what we've got. So I've got a little razor saw, carefully saw back to those lines that we've got on here. And we'll do one in the middle. So we're going to try and join that line that I've squared down from the end grain and that line that I've squared down. And carefully chisel back to these lines here as well. Right, and let's do that on the other side now. Right, so we're going to test and see how this works. So firstly, just need to relieve this a little bit to make that dowel a little bit easier to fit in there, because it's a tad on the snug side at the moment. Okay, so this is going to be coming in from this way. The dowel is going to be cut to a shorter length, obviously. So yeah, the dowel won't be this long, but I'm just checking it's going to come in from the other side. So once we get to this bit, that should slide down and lock itself in place. Happy days. So then what we're left with is that little bit on the end there. So I'll probably just like plane a dome onto it, or maybe chamfer the edges. Don't really know, but we'll make that look somewhat decorative. But there we go, that's our rudimentary lock. So now I am going to drill the other half of the dowel holder thing on here. So this is going to be the full width of the dowel. So we're going back to 25 millimeters. So referencing in from the front, that was where the center of this is going to be. So we're going to do exactly the same one here, referencing in from the front, do our line up, and then we need to get the center point of both of those two holes that we've drilled on the top there. So that is the larger one, and we want the bottom. Actually, what I'm going to do is measure up, so that is 14 mil to the bottom of that. So then on here, if I do 14 millimeters plus half the diameter of 25, that's going to get me the center point, so another 12.5 on top of that. So right about there. That means that the bottom of the 25 millimeter dowel hole is going to stop at exactly the same point as the bottom of this one as well. So we really don't need to go in a lot here. Yeah, maybe about 5-6 mil or so, and then we'll get it located on this other hole. So then pare those down so we've got a nice oval slot going on. Brilliant, that should be all we need. So now I'm going to cut the dowel to its final length, I reckon. So from the inside of that notch, it's going to be the size of one of the shelves plus another 5 millimeters or so to nest into that opposite component. So we'll do it oversized to start with, and then we'll test the fit after we've glued it all together. Still need to loosen the fit a bit to make a bog roll change a little bit quicker and easier. So otherwise you're just going to end up ripping this thing off the wall every time you need to get more paper off. Mind you, at least you could fix the plasterboard while doing a number 2 at the same time. Right, so I've got it all assembled again, and we'll see if this fits. So that's going to go in like that, and then your bog roll is going to go under like that. Shove that through. We're going to loosen the fit, obviously, and we just got to turn it so that the key lines up. Voila. Slide down, lock itself in place. That ain't going anywhere. So yeah, there's the toilet roll holder. So now we've just got to sand all the inside faces, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll glue it all together. And we also need to loosen the fit of this dowel ever so slightly so that it's not too difficult to remove it later on, because it's fairly snug at the moment. Right, and then while that's gluing, I'm going to try and reduce the size of the dowel with a plane so I can take off an even amount on all of the sides. So I'm going to start like this and then just slowly rotate it round each pass at a time. And this should be a little bit quicker than sanding and help keep it straight all the way along, because sanding I might accidentally put a taper in it or something like that and it'll be difficult to fix later on. So I can just remove those little facets on there. Right, let's see how that fits. It's much better, but it's still a little bit snug. Like pulling it out, yeah, maybe we'll just do another pass all the way around. Just a little bit tight on one end now, so focus on that with the sanding a bit more. Yeah, that'll do. Nice and firm in there, but pretty easy to remove as well. So now we'll just wait for it to dry, give it a clean up and see what we're left with. Right, there we go. So that is all dried up. Looks very, very nice. This is a very good fit now. So in the next video, we're just gonna flush off everything on the back, slap a finish on it and hopefully install it, providing it fits in the area that I had in mind for installing it. I haven't actually checked that yet, probably should have. Yeah, see you then.